This whole idea of embracing the ordinary person doing extraordinary things. There is a quiet greatness to excellence. We so very often hear the stories of the goats, and we're losing the beauty of society. We're losing the coreness of who we are, of the people who are consistently great every single day.
I believe the best way to express authenticity is at first dealing with what fears and insecurities are holding you back from allowing you to be authentic.
I don't know if that's science, but it's definitely chemistry. This word chemistry we use on the field. In corporate speak, it's culture. There is some meat to that. And if you don't have a good chemistry or culture, your team could win in the short term. You may win a game, but you will not win the championship. It is not sustained success.
Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. On today's show, I have Joanna Lohman with me. Joanna is a former professional soccer player. She's an author. She's a faculty member of Limitless Minds. She wrote the book, Raising Tomorrow's Champion. She's known for championing authenticity. We are already off to a great start. Her word of the year she shared with me is impact, right? And I love that. And it was actually one of my questions. First off, I got to add this. Why impact? Why? Why did you choose that as your word?
I'm in your head. Clearly, I'm already reading your mind. So this past winter, I'm a professional speaker, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, what is the main message that is authentic and real from a celebrity lesbian who was a professional soccer player for 16 years, who played on the women's national team. And I worked with a speaking coach, and I found this coach because he watched some of my speaking material, and I was really excited about our conversation. I thought he might manage me. I told my wife, I was like, my life is going to change. This man is going to really up-level my career. I'm going to get a ton more opportunities. I sent him all my stuff. Honestly, Tyler, it was 10 days till he wrote back. First of all, I thought he ghosted me, right? I was like, damn, I got ghosted.
Okay.
And I'm in Argentina with the State Department running programs using soccer as a vehicle for human rights down in Buenos Aires. I finally hear from him. And his email is essentially like, Joe, I love you. I love the way you show up. I love your presence on stage. I don't like your message. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, it felt like a punch to the stomach. And I was literally about to go on stage and speak in Argentina. So definitely
bad timing.
Yeah, my pride took a hit. And my initial reaction was to be like, fuck you, right? Like, you don't know me.
Yeah, okay.
And then I thought, what better person to hire to help me create that message than the man who thinks it can be better, right? So I hired him. And we spent months together crafting this speech that is authentically mine. Let me tell you why, Tyler. I speak in high performance. So the speech that he saw was high performance. It's a wonderful speech. He's like, Joe, if I want high performance, I'm going to hire a Marine. I'm going to hire a Navy SEAL. I'm not going to hire you. And I was like, fair enough, right? Like, those are the highest of the highest performers. He's like, you need to find something that you are the only person who can give this speech. So him and we are basically archaeologists of my life. We're like sifting through relics and clues of stories and impactful moments. And he's really listening to how my career transpired. And this is a 16-year professional career, a member of the United States women's national team. I'm one of 270 women to ever wear the U.S. jersey dating back to 1985. So talk about the most exclusive sorority that you can be a part of. I'm one of them. Yet, I didn't reach the level that I wanted to, right? It was like I was always on the periphery. I was cut from teams. I didn't make the World Cup team. I lost all 3 championship games I played in. I spent a lot of time on the bench instead of on the field. I tore my ACL in what should have been the best season of my life. I got paid $15,000 a year to play professional soccer. So there was so much failure that I had accomplished, right, in this career. And it wasn't until about 2014, 2015 that I came back to the Washington Spirit, which is my hometown team. I was able to plant some roots because I was living with my parents at the age of 34, right? Pray for me.
Goals. Exactly.
Yeah,
What's that? Gen Z goals. can I interject? That's
Please.
like, for me at 45, it was like, get away from home. Now it's like, if you're 34 and you're living, man, you've won because you don't have to pay for anything. So that is
Right?
just an interjection. Please keep going because this is great.
So I moved back home. I'm 34. My idea of what this life was going to be the star soccer player, right, Tyler? I thought I was going to be the next Mia Hamm. I was on track to be top 5 in the first ever women's professional soccer draft. That league goes bankrupt, Tyler. There's a 5-year hiatus. I travel around the world trying to find myself, trying to pursue this idea of professional soccer. I'm living out of a bag, nomadic existence. I'm barely getting paid. I come back, I play in a second league. Guess what? That league goes bankrupt. Here we go again. Now I'm traveling again. So it was like I had this vision of my life coming out of college that was anything but that, right? I was broken at the age of 33, moving in with my parents. And it was with that time, because I had that support system. I knew where my next meal was coming from because mom was making it and she was downstairs. I could put my head on the same pillow night after night. I was able to deeply reflect on the career that I had. And do you remember those like magic eye posters from the 90s where if you stared at them, you like crossed your eyes a little bit? It's like at a dentist, right? And you
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and like all of a sudden you're like, there's that fucking giraffe that's like hidden in this picture. And if you don't know, you can look it up. They're pretty awesome. So I had one of these on my wall when I was in my parents' house, right? My mom never took it down. And it is like the most literal lesson on perspective shift as you can get. And so I had this epiphany moment, like a ball that hit me in the face, right? Where you're like, your eyes are watering, your nose feels bloody and broken. And it completely forced me to see my career in a different way. It forced me to look back and look at all these failures and see the actual accomplishment. Sure, I didn't make the World Cup, but I am one of 270 women to ever wear the US jersey. I lost all 3 championship games I played in, but I was the person in that final, sweating, bleeding, right? Committing to greatness with no guarantee of glory. There are 200 plus players each of those years who don't even get to be in that moment, let alone all the young girls who dream of that kind of shit. So I was looking back and I was like, wait a minute. This has been a really cool career. Not only that, when you think about the game of soccer or football or lacrosse, any sport you choose, only one player can score the goal, right? There is one player who scores the goal. And at the moment a player scores a goal, there are 10 other players on the field, soccer, there's 11, that contributed to that goal happening. You have the midfielder who may play the needle-threading pass. You have the defender who makes that slide tackle, bone-crushing tackle to win the ball back. You have the goalkeeper making the fingertip save at the opposite side of the field. So sure, only one player gets the glory, but it's the team that wins the game. So it struck me that you don't have to be the greatest to be great, right? You don't have to be the greatest to be great. And my whole career, I chased this elusive shadow of greatness, of being the next Mia Hamm, of being the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And it wasn't until I accepted this reality, I'm not going to be Mia Hamm. For whether it be circumstance, skill, timing, luck, that just wasn't who I was. But I can still make a significant impact on the outcome of the game by contributing my role to the best of my ability and doing it consistently in a way that my teammates and my coaches can rely on. So that's what I started doing. I let go of comparison. I let go of the result, the stats, the accolades, right? Winning the All-Star, getting into the All-Star team. And I just fucking did the dirty work. I put my head down. I ran for my teammates. I made the slide tackles. I made all the assists, right? I played behind Crystal Dunn at this point, who was the top goal scorer for the Washington Spirit that season. And I just thrived as that support player. And that really changed my life, because when you think about teams and organizations, not everyone can be the CEO. Not everyone can be the top sales leader. And so we are minimizing the impact of what I believe is the lifeblood of every single organization. We are making these people feel invisible. We are making these people feel unrecognized, unacknowledged, when they are what I believe to be the critical parts of moving forward, right? When you get buy-in from these people, that's where the rubber hits the road. And so you can have any vision as a CEO of Starbucks, give an example. You could have this amazing vision, but if the barista giving you the coffee is not exercising that vision for you as a CEO, like, good luck to you, right? So it's this whole idea of embracing the ordinary person doing extraordinary things. because there is a quiet greatness to excellence. And I think we so very often hear the stories of the GOATs, of the best, and we're losing the beauty of society. We're losing, like, I think the coreness of who we are, of the people who are consistently great every single day. So that's a long-winded answer of why I use the word impact.
I appreciate the backstory and the moments that brought you there.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same point as you got to the end, almost verbatim, is the exact reason why when I started what I'm doing now, as the name of the podcast was Impact Driven, it was for that exact same reason, that too many times, too many leaders make it all about them. And this is mine, and we could, as friends sitting down and meeting for the first time, but having close friends that, quite honestly, I knew that we would get along from Cullen and Hannah, because they appreciate, I adore them both. Is for me, and this is what I want to know, is what do you think before that moment, that
Mm-hmm.
impactful, that catalytic moment?
Yeah.
What do you think, either from coaches, from peers, from anyone else, drove you to think that you didn't have value unless you were the goal scorer?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think society reinforces this idea that if you aren't the greatest at something, then there is no business doing it, right? We think about this, especially in sports. Like, those are the players who make the highlights. Those are the players who are ESPN top 10. Those are the athletes who make the all-star teams, who get the awards at the end of the year. So there isn't much reinforcement for the role player, which we can call them, the impact player. There's not much
The
reinforcement.
impact player, yes.
Yeah, the impact
Little
player.
Liz Wiseman.
Yeah,
Do you know
exactly. Yeah.
that's it.
And you need a great coach who prioritizes player 1 through player 20 on your roster. You need a great coach who understands that if you want a team to win the game, you need the contribution and value from each and every person, from the star player to the person on the bench. Because when we think about it, Tyler, organizations are made up of the people who don't score the goals, right? The majority of organizations are people who don't score the goals, who are not the CEOs or the top salespeople. And damn, do you need those people, right?
Well, at the same point, I mean, I don't know too many soccer teams. Like you and producer Alex were talking about Tobin Heath right beforehand. I don't know how many games she played where it was 1-11 and she won.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
just show me that. How many strikers, or even 2-11? It doesn't work,
No.
right? It just doesn't work. And yet, I think what's interesting, and I hinge this, and I wonder, because of what you said, that too many leaders and too many coaches, especially the ones that were, say, elite.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this happen, right? And this happened for me, my background in soccer. I watched a soccer coach who played professionally. And if you weren't the fastest, like, most elite player he didn't care about you. You were just whatever. I don't care about you. You're worthless to me. And whether he would say those in words, and even though he didn't believe that, his actions reverberated that to every single player. And I see this so often in cases where, like, elite athletes that start coaching that didn't go through the grind like what you went through, they start coaching and they don't understand why the player who is, at that 18 to 20 feels worthless, because the coach is like, I don't really care if you're here or not. I'll just find someone else, instead of saying what you just understood. Like, they bring something so unique. Even if it's the person that is standing there on the bench, that is high-fiving everyone, that is bringing, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Steve Nash did this a lot when he was playing basketball. There's also another player that, a basketball player, he misses a shot, his teammate lifts up his chin.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that person is as impactful as the person that scores every single point. In too many coaches, I see this in youth sports, and having experienced it myself, don't emphasize being on the team and a teammate.
Mm-hmm.
whether it's me watching the teams that we're a part of, watching my kids play, is I love to see, it's kind of like hockey, the second assist, or like in soccer, it's the keeper that places the ball perfectly, that starts the scoring play. No, you cheer that one, not the person that finishes. They just had a simple tap in. All right. Most 9-year-olds could do that, but it's the person 3-4 passes before that did something exceptional that gets overlooked. And it's like, no, that's the person.
Mm-hmm.
And organizations don't do that.
Yeah, no, this resonates with me because I think there's a common misperception that if you take the best individuals and you throw them together onto a field or in a room, the trophy is won, the KPIs are hit. But you and I know that is bullshit, right? I've seen it with my own eyes. I played in Japan where they never once catered to a team star. Honestly, Tyler, they would rather pass the ball into the goal than have one player score. And they won the Women's World Cup in 2011 with a team that ran like clockwork. I saw the opposite in Cyprus, where I was flown in with a handful of US All-Stars to help the local team win the Champions League. Total failure. It was embarrassing. Like we got crushed, right? And I don't know if that's science, but it's definitely chemistry. This word chemistry we use on the field. In corporate speak, it's culture, right? Like that, there is some meat to that. And if you don't have a good chemistry or culture, your team could win in the short term. You may win a game, but you will not win the championship. It is not sustained success.
100%. I think, for me, what I had to walk through, much the same. And what got me to the point of understanding, man, impact is everything, is I had to overcome my insecurities and understanding my value.
Yeah.
Like, I had accomplishments, but the world didn't really care. Like, it's kind of like you. It's like, oh, I was on the women's national team, but I'm not a perennial starter like Alex Morgan or whatever else, right? I can say, but they're like, who are you? Do you play and then what you find, and I appreciate, and I love this, is you find ways to stick out. Like when you aren't getting the recognition. So, you have a blonde mohawk. Great. Now you're recognizable, right? And whether we do that just because it's fun, or we find people that start to do that so they feel valued. And when we do it for the wrong reasons in organizations or on teams, we tear apart everything. And what I center back on, and why, the business that I have in the podcast, impact-driven leader, because it takes a leader to focus on it, even if that leader is the person on the team like you, to say, I'll make the pass. I'll play, I'll play the last 10 minutes and be so glad to finish the game and be excited about it, because that's what I can do to contribute, that I don't need to get all the accolades.
Yeah, and the irony for me, Tyler, was the years that I said to myself, I don't care if I play 2 minutes or every minute. I don't care what the stat sheet says after the game. I'm just going to show up, give my best game after game. Those were the years where I was the second leading goal scorer. Those were the years I didn't miss a minute due to injury. I was connecting to a fan base like I had before. I became the star of the team. How about that for irony, right? When I let go of becoming the star, I became the fucking face of the franchise. People were buying jerseys with my name on the back of it. They were putting me in promo ads for our team and our league. There was no coincidence between fully embracing and harnessing my unique greatness, both off the field and then high performance on it, right? Because I think we're so obsessed with the comparison. We're so obsessed with results, the followers, the fans, the KPIs, like the numbers, right? Analytics data is so important now that we completely lose sight of what we can actually control and what matters, which is that process that leads to those greatness and that result. So what is your process? What is your unique greatness that allows you to contribute your value to the team? And that is not going to be the same for everyone, right? There's no cookie cutter way to approach this. It takes a lot of reflection. It takes a lot of self-awareness to know, okay, this is who I am. These are my strengths. This is how I want to contribute them. It also takes a great coach and a great leader to recognize, hey, I want you doing what you're great at. I'm not going to put you in positions of weakness. I'm not going to ask the forward to play goalie or vice versa. That's not going to work for us. So it's like this beautiful chemistry, right? This harmoniousness that we have between teammates where no one of us is as good as all of us, right? It's the entire team is more powerful when each player contributes that unique value, which then lifts the entire whole.
you speak about it, you talk about it being authentic. You mentioned that when you and I first chatted, right? Right before we opened, it's like, hey, I'm about authentic.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that I've understood, and this is what I've had to walk through, and I mentioned just a bit ago, is what value did I have? And that was always being questioned because my insecurities, my fears were overwhelming me, whether it be displayed through intensity or other ways. And what I found, and this is where I want a conversation because I want to hear your perspective and what similarity and difference is. I believe the best way to express authenticity is at first dealing with what fears and insecurities are holding you back from allowing you to be authentic. Because this, and I want you to answer this, is my theory is if we're chasing the positive response rather than understand, it's kind of like if we're chasing the outside rather than understanding why we do it, we're always going to look for the next Band-Aid.
This is such a great topic because I recently created what I believe is like 3 dimensions to activating authentic impact. And the first dimension to activating authentic impact is a word I use, defy. So, and that's exactly what you're describing is this idea of defiance, because we are all limited. We're all boxed in by certain pressures that exist in our world, whether it's limiting beliefs that we possess, these narratives in our head. I'm not a good leader. Oh, I could never be the goal scorer. Like these narratives that we've created from somewhere. Second is societal expectations, like, from whether it's gender, cultural, religious, parental, you have expectations that you are, almost forced into this box. So the defiance piece is being able to break out of whatever these limiting beliefs are. And until you can break out of those limiting beliefs, I don't think you can be authentic because you're living a life according to other people's standards. You are looking out to make sure I'm okay inside. And that is a very dangerous game to play because you're placing your worth and value in the hands of someone else's opinion. A lot of kids are doing that now with social media, right? It's difficult really to figure out who you are because you're being so molded by other people and other sources and pressures. And so the first dimension is defy. The second dimension I have is discover. Once you're able to defy and step outside of whatever restrictive box you're kind of like bending your body and breaking your soul to fit into, then you have to discover who you actually are. And that comes with experimentation. And you're not just one thing, right? We're not one thing or two things. We are a multitude of incredible dimensions as human beings. So when I think about this, instead of asking, like, are you funny? Are you athletic? It's how are you funny? How are you athletic? Because we are all things. So it's just discovering what those dimensions are to your identity. And then the third dimension is deploy, which is a fun word to use. And because I truly believe that authenticity is not showing up one way and one way only. To me, authenticity is meeting the demands of the moment with a quiet mind, sound body, and open heart. Like that's what authenticity is to me. So that may look different in this room with you, Tyler, than it would with my wife, at a dinner. Or there may be times where I need to come in and be the leader. There may be times where I need to come back and just really listen. And so for me, authenticity is understanding how do I deploy my dimensions and strengths in this moment so I'm meeting the demands and the people in it. So that's like, does that make sense, those 3 dimensions?
If I could give you my framework and we could see where they cross over and, yes, it's very similar. I would say for me, it's kind of, for me, it's recognizing your fears and insecurities. We all have them. Every single person living, breathing, walking on this world ever has fears and insecurities. It's a human nature. And to think I don't have them, no, they're there. And then the second piece of that is owning how it shows up to others. And it's being okay with that. Because, to me, to become authentic, where you're at is being genuinely authentic is I want to act in a way to help bring out the best in others. And if my authenticity is, poking in your face and say, I don't agree, that doesn't bring out the best in you and me. That's not healthy authenticity. That is toxic authenticity. That doesn't do anyone any good. If you're on the pitch, right, and you're being authentic and you're screaming at the wing that they're not in the right spot and you can't whatever, that level of authenticity, yeah, that maybe is the right, but it doesn't help them get there. You go over and it's like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Maybe we're not on the same page. Get to this spot. I will get you the ball, or vice versa. That is healthy authenticity. That's a good conversation. And then the last piece of that, which you touched on, is, once we recognize the fears and insecurities, own how it shows up, but then also reframing our mindsets and beliefs. That, oh, I'm not a bad leader. I'm not a bad player. Oh, I have a role on this team to where I can be a star by just being me, who helps everyone else up level and be better. And so what you just shared and what I shared, a little different makeup, right? But of the same thing. And I think that's what's exciting to me is when you hear this from people, and you and I come from completely different backgrounds, different perspectives, different experiences, but yet that similar sits there and just say, oh, that's to me, that's overwhelmingly human.
Yeah. When I hear you talk about it, I hear the way you speak about it in a dynamic way, right? Authenticity is not a destination. It's an orientation. It's a lifestyle of how we show up. And the human experience is incredibly complex. And I think if we don't appreciate that complexity, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're doing the people that we're around a disservice, because leadership is nuanced, right, Tyler? Like, you can't lead each person the exact same way. And
No, it
the
doesn't
whole
work.
idea, it doesn't work. This like militaristic, drive you into the ground, break you down.
But the military doesn't do it either.
They don't do it anymore. Yeah, no, it's so outdated. And I still think they are the leadership styles that sometimes we put on pedestals. And I don't just see it in the corporate world. I also see it in the sports world, where you have, especially in the youth sports world, where our kids are being taught that leadership is by manipulation and fear. And then they normalize it.
Can we put that on a shirt?
Yes, I would love to.
Joanna Lohman, don't lead with manipulation and fear. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Does not work. Stop doing it. To me, that comes back to, why are those coaches doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Their insecurity.
Their insecurities, yeah.
Oh, I need to have the next academy player or I'm not a worthwhile coach. I have to win the league championship or I'm not a good coach. How about you focus on the other 199 players that are going to be professional in something else other than soccer and make them great people? And you will be the greatest coach they've ever had in their life.
It's sad to see that this type of leadership still exists. And you have to make people believe that their work has meaning and that they are able to impact that work, right? In order for them to work well. And so great leaders have to create that environment, that chemistry where each person's impact truly has meaning. Or else people are just going to, check in, check out, right? Like, that's what we're seeing a lot, is that people just won't care, because why should they? Why should they care if you're not, as a leader, making them care?
I'm going to hit on that one first, then I have a question, because I want to know, where did this come from? Like, what did you read? What did you learn? Who were you around that helped you, figure these things out? So just going to sit on that one. But the other piece there is, twofold. Youth coaches, youth sports, whether they understand it or not, they are conditioning our next generation of workers. Mm-hmm. If you lead through manipulation and fear, they're going to expect that from every other leader they have. So if you're running a business right now, and say you have someone in your office that's 24 and you are frustrated because they quiet quit, they don't really take responsibility and accountability, don't go look at their parents. Go find their youth soccer coach, go find their high school football coach and say, you dirty dog. You ruined this person because how you manipulated and caused fear. Once we get to that point, we can start changing our workforce. And unfortunately, I had to walk through that, see that with my son, see that as an assistant coach and realize, oh, this is what we're creating. In the part there that I think is so interesting today, and it's facing, as a Gen X, as 45, and so many leaders like, oh, why are Gen Z the way they are? Because they're big enough to be. The baby boomers acted in a way because it was a big enough generation. The millennials, not quite enough. They pushed 15 years ago, it's like, oh, how do you deal with millennials? And all of a sudden we go to Gen Z and they're like, well, they're doing all these things. I'm like, yeah, guess what? Baby boomer, Gen X, we created it.
Yes. Yes.
So I say all that. And then I want to go back to, where did you, what helped you discover and enlighten you to figure out, very similar things that I had to walk through and figure out?
It wasn't really a choice, Tyler. Honestly, I was put in situations in my
I
life.
was forced.
Yeah. Where I had some fundamentally shaping identity experiences. So when I told you about the first league folding was my senior year of college. So I was also engaged to a man at this point. So imagine I'm engaged to a man, that relationship is falling apart because I realize that I'm gay. So my future, which I thought was the ideal societal perfection of future, the husband, we'd buy the house in suburbia, we'd, white picket fence, 2.3 kids, like I had it all. I was going to be the next Mia Hamm, top 5 in the draft. I was ready to go professional. Like my whole life was laid out. And I kid you not, Tyler, like overnight, it all fell apart. I lost the husband and I lost the dream career. And when you go through situations like that of utter failure and trauma, it forces you to pick up the pieces of your identity and decide which ones still fit me? Which ones do I want to rebuild with? Which ones do I need to let go of? So like heteronormative shit, I got to let go of that, right? Like I'm not going to be fitting into that mold. So I'm going to let go of those pieces. And then I picked them up and built myself into a different version. Keep in mind, then I launch over like a 10-year period where I'm living out of a bag. I'm playing on 7 different teams in 5 different countries. Like that is discomfort, that is pain and suffering. And so I'm desperate to keep this career alive. And then, like I told you, at 33, I'm broken and broke back with my parents, and I'm having to find myself yet again. And so I think it's the combination of, listen, sports gives you a safe place to suffer, a public and safe space to suffer. So I am used to suffering. And 2, putting myself in positions that truly challenge who I am. I could have married that man, Tyler. I could be married right now, living with him, having children. But that has not been who I am in my identity. Like for whatever reason, nature, nurture, I needed to find who I was at basically whatever cost. And luckily my family was supportive. I'm a white woman in America. I'm not in the Middle East. Like there are circumstances where that give me safety. So I look at that also as privilege, and that privilege is a responsibility for me to push boundaries. If I'm not feeling resistance, then I'm not living my life in a way that I should. Does that make sense? Because there are people behind me who are queer, who want to cut their hair into a mohawk, who, want to feel accepted. And if I can step out and take that heat, if I can be misgendered instead of them, if I can be, like torn up on social media and called a man and, all this kind of stuff, and it makes it safer for someone walking behind me, that has been since the beginning of my career something that has been a passion of mine, is just to make someone else feel more comfortable in their own skin by living in my own truth. And the feedback I've gotten is like, it matters, right? Like it truly matters when someone shows up authentically, you automatically make them feel safer to take that step. And that's just something like I've really enjoyed doing.
Again, drilling a little bit deeper, was it the people you were around, that helped kind of educate you, inform you, help you? Again, you talk about your coach earlier. Were there, while you were playing, were there coaches? Were you reading books? Like what was giving you kind of that foundation to take each one of those steps? So, it wasn't just something that you pulled out of the air, that, you happened to be dribbling a ball one day and like, oh, what about this?
Yeah, like the micro moments that I can think of is like, for one, my parents were supportive yet hands off, right? I had an older brother and an older sister. My parents never played soccer before. So there was this autonomy to live our own lives, and there was a trust and confidence given by my parents to us to be able to make the decisions that are best for our lives. And so I think there are these micro moments to confidence. I'll give you an example of when I was basically in kindergarten. I was a tomboy growing up. I had an older brother. We played every single sport together. All my best friends were boys. So I was like playing rugby, football, baseball, basketball with boys, bloody noses, like all that kind of stuff. And I'm in kindergarten. I'm literally running circles around the room. My best friend is in the class with me. He's running circles around, but all the other kids are falling over. And so the teacher calls my mom and she's like, "Listen, Nancy, Joanna runs too much." And that's a situation where my mom could be like, "You know what, you're right. I'm going to ask her to calm down." But my mom, knowing my nature and wanting to support it, was like, "Actually, no, she doesn't. She's perfectly fine. I'm going to move her out of your class." And if you read my book, Raising Tomorrow's Champions, it is all these micro moments that truly shape someone's character. And a lot of it comes from their parents, their siblings, their support systems when they were youth that just like fed them that spoon of confidence. Like, you're good, kid. Like, exactly as you are. Keep being you. Keep running. Keep jumping. Keep kicking that ball. And like, I feel like I won the parent lottery. I actually posted this on LinkedIn 2 days ago. Like, I had the most amazing parents. They would never know that. They didn't think they did anything right. But man, like, they just fed me with a sense of self-belief and worth at a time where it wasn't easy for someone like me, like to be a tomboy and, like I was different, and they just kept saying, you're good, like you got this. And so naturally, I think I just slowly stepped into this space where no matter what happened, Tyler, like I knew I could fucking handle it, Whether that was coming out, whether that was cutting off all of my hair, whether that was traveling around the world, living in Japan, living in Sweden, living in Cyprus, living in Spain, learning the language, like I just knew I could figure it out. And I think a lot of that has to do with parents and also playing sports. It just gives you a situation where you can pick yourself back up again after falling over a ton of times.
One thing for me was finding a mentor, mentors and reading books that kind of like, I didn't read. I mean, I went to an Ivy League university, and I don't know how I got
Yeah,
there,
you
but I just
did.
hated to read.
Yeah.
And so, but then all of a sudden you come to a point in life where you're like, man, I'm so curious. I want to learn because I want to get better. And so for me, that was in the mid 30s and kind of that smack in the moment. For me, traumatic event when I was 14, brother dying, how I manifested, trauma and just, again, that insecurity. And then all of a sudden at 36, 37, it's like, oh, this is how you deal with stuff. Like, it's not working. So kind of, similar in some ways, but for me, it was finding, the belief in mentors that
Mm-hmm.
really helped me say, no, you're going the right path. And
Yes.
your experiences are there, much like yourself. Your experiences are there to serve others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think either leaders don't recognize that because they want to hide from their insecurities and not be authentic because I have to fill the mold, instead of saying, no, I want to lead differently. Like I was talking to my buddies this morning, and next week I'm hosting, as we're recording this, hosting
you're
an
hosting your
event.
summit.
Yeah, and one of my buddies, he got me as a referral gift. He got me a pair of Jordan 4s. I'm like, I've never worn them. I've had them like 8-9 months, and I'm like, yeah, I maybe should wear them. And then my other buddy's like, yeah, the other day we had this big corporate event, and I wore some like, I don't know, some different Jordan. I'm not a Jordan. Like, I have them. My boys love them, whatever. And he's like, somebody looks at me, he's like, oh, casual. He's like, no, these are like way, actually they're way more expensive than your loafers, and they're actually pretty fly. Like, they're good stuff. And it's just amazing that now we are in that place, much like what you're saying is that's okay. And I'd much rather have I'd much rather go to an event. It's just me. Maybe it's my style. I'd rather have the person that's real and who they are on stage rather than, oh, are they in a Navy, suit with a tie and whatever else. And it's like, I think there's a moment of understanding the room, right? And it comes back to what I share is authentic and like this genuine authenticity. I don't want to show up in a t-shirt and jeans and everyone else is in black tie. No, that doesn't work. But yet finding the way to still be you and be vulnerable enough, because I think that's the key, is having the vulnerability to say, I have a friend that shared this with me. It's why do I wear black shirts? One, because it's easy, COVID,
Yeah.
but two, I get sweaty pits. And so no one can see it. It's all good.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you're sharing is like, there's an ability and comfort to get there.
Yeah.
In not only your own belief, but whether it's your parents, whether it's those friends around you, say, no, you're good.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yes. Yeah, that totally resonates with me. And when I think more, like you've sparked more ideas in my life, it wasn't always smooth sailing with my parents. I think for them, the challenge was how I expressed my gender. So like having this wicked mohawk, wanting to wear suits. And I distinctively remember I got hired for a speech at the Kennedy Center, which is like the arts like center in Washington, DC, like amazing space. It is like the epitome of fame, like in DC. And my mom loves the Kennedy Center. So I was like, Mom,
I mean, from growing up right outside of DC, Silver Spring, like I get it, right? Okay.
Yes. And so for me, like my mom's like, okay, she's made it, right? Like this is her moment. And I call my mom and I'm so excited about going to the Kennedy Center. Just had heard the news. And my mom is excited for me. And she goes, Joe, what are you going to wear? And she asked that because I think she's nervous that I'm not going to wear what she believes to be the standard of the Kennedy Center. And literally a week later, I'm like, why did she ask me that? A week later, she's like, I talked to my friend Barbara. We think you should wear a dress. Tyler, at this point, I had not worn a dress in like 5 years. Like I did not feel good in a dress. So that was like an arrow straight to my heart of like, Mom, aren't we past this? You know what I mean? Like, don't you see who I am? And so that was another moment for me where I was just like, F that. I'm not going to wear a dress. And I go straight to like Macy's. I get this suit fitted to me and I feel like $1,000,000, Tyler, like $1,000,000. She comes to pick me up and she's like, you look really good. And I knew at that speaking event that I would somehow like speak directly to my mom through a question. And someone asked me when I was up on stage, they asked me, does anyone ever try to like instigate you because of your sexual orientation on the field? Like, does someone try to get underneath your skin? And I was like, ooh, this is my moment to talk to my mom. And so I said to the person, I said, it's not because of my sexual orientation. I get a lot of resistance from how I express my gender. Like walking into a locker room, I feel incredibly uncomfortable. Walking into a women's bathroom, the airport is like a gender war zone. Like it's not comfortable for me. And I know that there are ways that I could really tap down the way that I look. I could grow my hair out. I could wear a dress. I literally said this. And I said, but sitting up here in this suit, right, with these muscles, being athletic, this is how I feel beautiful. And no one should be able to tell you how you feel beautiful. And so when I said that out loud, I think my mom registered it, right? So everyone starts clapping. They just think it's amazing. I come down off stage and my mom comes up to me and she says, you were talking to me, weren't you? And I said, yeah, Mom, I was. So it was just such a powerful moment because I think it was in that moment my mom realized, okay, like this is Jo being her authentic self. And look how she lights up a room in that suit. If I would have been wearing a dress, I would have felt so uncomfortable. I would have felt small and minimized. And so it taught her that it's it's your choice, right? Like you choose how you want to show up. And just fucking own it, right? Like own it. And so from that moment on, she's like never commented on my clothes because she knows better. But it took a moment like that for even my mom. This is like 35 years later to be like, okay, Jo, like you still got this, right?
You mentioned this earlier in kind of the societal expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And even as you just shared, and again, asking for vulnerability, we've been there. It's like, how much of what you just said does this, this idea of I need to express, no, this is who I am, right? In a suit. Great. Awesome. Forcing against the societal pressure of a female, whatever it should be, that kind of disrupts this. Yeah, but that's not, but like just that whole soup of like, even if, again, I'm going to force it because you're not going to tell me, right?
Yeah.
My wife is classic about this. Don't tell me what to do. It's like, I'm not telling you. We're conversing. Like, is that such a difficulty? And as you're thinking about that and pondering, and I shared this, Alex, my producer, heard this. We're on a podcast and I was talking to a gentleman and we were just sharing about like childhood experiences. I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a farm in Ohio. I grew up on the farm in the 80s and early 90s where farmers were like ridiculed and mocked. Like we were, why are we struggling in American agriculture? Because so many kids got forced off of farms because society says you're worthless to us. If you're on the farm, you're young, you're dumb, like you have no value. That's what I grew up in. And as much kind of like I'm grateful for my parents' experience, kind of like what you shared of like, hey, there's more opportunity for you and like be willing to see more opportunity. And there was never, hey, be willing to see more opportunity. But man, this is a great industry to live and work in. It wasn't that way. And as I shared it with him, and this, was a homosexual man, and he said, wow, that's what I was like growing up as a gay man in Florida. And it's like, so you were curious about me growing up on a farm because you thought it was idyllic and it's amazing because that's what culture says today. But for 40 years of my life, I'm just waiting for someone to start scoffing and laughing and go around the corner. It's like, he's a stupid farm kid.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about that is, why do I have that sign behind me? Because I embraced it. It's cool. It's fine because people want to know more. But yet I also go to society and I can remember, I told him the story, I can remember riding on the school bus And I lived in rural Ohio and getting made fun of because I smelled like cows. And so it's a little bit of those, how do I embrace it? Yeah, to you. And it just, again, playing this out, I can wear a dress and I'm okay with it because it doesn't define who I am. And maybe, yeah, I'm cool with it. Maybe I want to wear a spring, summer dress because I can, right? And it's, again, I don't know. And I just want to, like, as you sit with that, it's like, how, like, your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that farmer story, because I have a 2-year-old and like every book is about farmers. You would think every single person in the country is a farmer if you have a toddler, and we love farmers in this household. So thank you.
I mean, everyone that eats really kind of should, but that's a whole different podcast, some different.
It's a different podcast. So I think what you're asking is like, how do I look at it in terms of like, do I force this versus just like show up? Like how much to push the needle is, I think, what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Are you trying to prove it because society says, no, it can't be that way? Or, no, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, okay, roll.
Yeah. I think it's the okay roll. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Why? So I do a lot of travel internationally as a sports diplomat. And so I go to countries where it is literally illegal to be a homosexual. So imagine, like, here I am walking off the plane in Nigeria, where I'm going to work with local Nigerians. First of all, Tyler, something that I have learned, language comes from necessity. They have never needed the words to describe a homosexual. So when I walk down the street in the United States of America, everyone's like, that's a lesbian. Like, woohoo, that person's gay, right? Like, because we have the language. In Nigeria, they come up to me and they're like, do you have a husband? And this is a situation where, would I love to share that I have a wife and a daughter? Sure, but I'm not going to, because I can read the cultural situation. And I can also understand that I may be putting myself, my colleagues, in danger if I talk about this. And so there is, again, here is this nuance of reading a room. And so I call it soft diplomacy. And that's how I like to operate. There are moments where I am out on the front lines advocating. Trust me, Tyler, like with this current administration, with my community, like it's important for me to be outspoken. And there are moments where I don't speak about it. But listen to this. When I go to Nigeria and I do my work and people realize and they like me and they love my energy and I'm serving the community, and I go home and maybe they find me on Facebook and they realize who I am. Maybe it's the first queer person they've ever met in their entire life. And they're like, wow, that person was normal-ish, right? Like, I like that person. So I'm a big believer in this whole idea of soft diplomacy, of like, you don't have to pound on the table to get your point across. And so when I'm making presentations, when I'm doing speeches, workshops, I have a slide of my wife and daughter, and I speak about it just like anybody else would. It pops up on the screen. Everyone's like, oh. And I think it's the way that I just organically just allow life to be lived, and I allow people to really see me. So I'm not hiding. I'm not ashamed. At the same time, I'm not coming in with like a rainbow flag as, gay superhero.
Yeah. I'm going to force you to have an opinion because, I was reading this morning Meditations, Marcus Aurelius. And one of the things he really talked about there is our opinions are just made over time. And they can evolve over time. And you and I may have different opinions on things, which is great, fine, awesome. And those could evolve and change over time. As having a daughter who's 18, when you have a daughter who's 18, your opinions may be different than what they are now, as mine were different then, right? And it's just like, okay. And I think what you describe and what I appreciate about you as you've presented yourself here, and you and I completely in lockstep about, is just being genuinely authentic and, choosing authentic vulnerability because that's who you are, not because I'm trying to force someone else to have an opinion. Like, know where my background comes from, what my experience is, and same with yours. And that's how we got here. And to circle this all back around, where we are in such a challenge in today's world is from the outside not understanding who someone really is or what they actually are about or whatever words get spun, or in organizations, leaders not choosing to say, hey, be authentically you, and that's okay. But then also impressing and understanding, hey, we're all going to work in situations where we have to like read the room. And that's okay. I can be authentically me.
Yes.
And, take care of my cows and know that next week I'm not going to go wear my boots that have manure on them. It's just, could I do
Yeah.
that and be authentically me? Sure. Does it fit? Does it make sense? No. So instead of saying, you guys have to take me with my shit on my boots, no, that doesn't serve anyone.
I am so with you on that. And the metaphor that I like to use and the image in my brain is like being the DJ of your own life. You have all of these dials, right? And so certain situations, I'm turning dials down, I'm turning other ones up. And if you have that comfort, if you have that contentment in your own skin, if you're confident in who you are, if I'm going to Nigeria, I'm turning down the homo vibe. You know what I mean? Like I'm turning that down a little bit. I'm going to turn up something else, right? And so to be able to manipulate those dials and still feel authentic is what's important. And that's what I hear you saying. You have a confidence to know, okay, this part of me, I love it. It's not the part that I'm going to highlight in this environment for various reasons, but I'm going to highlight this part of me because I feel like this is really going to resonate and vibe with this group. And I think that's beautiful to be able to do that.
I think what's interesting as I study, as I look to mentors and follow, John Maxwell is one of my greatest mentors. John was a pastor whose his faith is everything. But as he says, like, my job is not to convict people. That's not me. I share who I am, what's in my heart, and I invite people into wherever I'm at. And I am going to work hard to make people feel comfortable and valued. Period. End stop. That's it. And when I embrace that as a lifestyle, not only my own faith, but as I've just shared with you, it's way less off-putting, in my opinion, when other people do that too. It's like, oh, I can roll with that. That's great. And I think that's where we're struggling so much in society, because people are having a hard time with that themselves.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the relationships we have strong relationships, and then but we're missing the middle ground of like, this person's my neighbor. I see them at the pool. I may not agree with them politically or socially, but we still like hang out and respect each other and can find value in each other's existence. I think that's the
If
part
their
that
house
we're
is on
losing.
fire, I'm going to call the firemen or
Yeah.
go try to pull them out, right? And
Yeah, I'm
that's
gonna care for them. Yeah, I'm gonna care for like my neighbor. This is literally back into the Constitution, and I think that's the part we're losing because we're becoming very isolated, isolated in our own lives, and not going out as much, not socializing as much. And when we do, it's with the people already in our circle, all the yes people. Like all your ideas are being, it's like a sounding board. You're not getting outside ideas of people who are different from you because we're not exposed to that anymore. And I think that's what you're really referencing, is that we're losing that human connection, I think.
which to me, from a leadership to make an impact, it has to be centered on connection, and it has to be empathetic, and it has to be done authentically and vulnerably, because I don't think you can accomplish anything unless it's that.
Yes, I 100% agree with that.
I don't even know this has been great conversation. Whatever my notes
It's
are,
so
it doesn't
fun.
matter. But one thing, and this is as a daughter, having a daughter, you have a
Yeah.
daughter. I'm also we have a couple USL teams here involved in the ownership there, women's team, phenomenal. And one of the things that is going on in our society, and this isn't meant to be, this goes along the conversation, is how do we stand up for women's rights and yet at the same point say, ooh, there's still a line?
Talk to me about that line. What does that
Yeah,
mean?
when it comes to like transgender, when it comes to that one, and again, I want to hear your perspective, because genuinely, I just want to know, like, help me understand, like, maybe the same or different. And as I sit here with a daughter who competed in a bunch of sports, and know my 18-year-old daughter is even, know what, like, her brother who's 17, who's 6'3", 200 pounds, and she's 5'5", 120 pounds, if they're going to play soccer, it's a completely different dynamic. I know from having involved in a professional men's team, professional women's team, a lot of, college and professional women's teams, they play against 14 and 15-year-old boys a lot of times for scrimmages, because that's where, from a fitness, from a strength, from all those things are similar. And yet we find this world, and I sit here with a mom who, in 50, 60 years ago was, man, I wish I had the opportunity where I can compete fairly. And we're finding that struggle. And so this isn't a setup. This is just, as we're going through it, I just wonder, how do you navigate that as a athlete, as a lesbian, a queer, a person, and at the same point as a mom, right? As having a daughter, right?
Yes.
How do you wrestle with all those?
I always want to start the conversation based in fact. I think there's a lot of rhetoric going around about trans athletes. I think there's a lot of misinformation. So the way I always want to start the conversation is like, what level are we talking about? Are we talking about K through 12? We'll stay there for a second. If we're talking about K through 12, I believe that you should be able to participate in the gender that you identify, because the point of sport from K through 12 is it's not to get a professional scholar, it's not to get a professional contract, it's not to get a scholarship, it is not to win like that's not what we're doing it for. If we really go back to the basis of what sport is used for, it's to provide these unparalleled lessons for these young women. Ones that I've spoken about why I am who I am is because I had the opportunity to play sport. So you're talking about a segment of our population that already has a higher rate of anxiety, depression, and suicide. And you're talking about a very, very small amount of people, right, who genuinely identify as a different gender. So I don't know of anyone, and maybe someone can correct me, of anyone who's just dressed up as a woman to participate in female sports. I have never seen it happen. And so K through 12, I think you should be able to participate in the gender that you identify. Once you hit college, Olympic, and professional, there must be common sense regulations that tries to make it as fair as possible. And that's where things get a little bit hairy, because it's the definition of fair. And what you're seeing now is that they had common sense regulations in place, but now they are making them much broader, right? So that female athletes are more protected as a class. Because you're right, Tyler, like there needs to be protections for female athletes. We are 12% testosterone body mass. There's a 12% difference between men and women in general. So yes. And to give an example, I played for the women's national team. When we would scrimmage like a 15-year-old boys team.
Yeah.
Because that was the level that we would scrimmage. And so when people are like, you should play Washington Spirit versus DC United, I'm like, no, we shouldn't.
We're going to get destroyed.
We'll get destroyed.
I mean, not technical ability, but just the physical, the
athleticism.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about college, professional, Olympics, there are common sense rules and regulations put into place to try to protect everyone. And what we're finding is that that's where we're going to have the conflict, because like USA Swimming, for instance, Leah Thomas at UPenn, she followed every single rule that was asked of her to compete fairly within swimming. And then people still say, well, this is unfair. And I think research found that Leah's times were 3% faster, still in transition, right? Still after taking estrogen, still following all the rules. She was still 3% faster than like the average, I would say. So listen, not everyone is going to be happy. I tend to fall on the side of human rights and like human compassion and allowing people to participate, because again, like we're working with a very small percentage of the population. And two, these are people who just want access and opportunity to participate in sport like the rest of us are. They're not doing it to win medals. They're not doing it to go to the Olympics, right? They're just doing it because it's part of their identity. It's part of their livelihood. Like literally it's life or death for them. And so for me, I would like them to be able to participate in the gender that they identify, as long as they follow whatever rules and regulations are a part of their sport. So that is like an answer that's more based in fact of like, okay, what area are we talking about? Because it's different, it's nuanced, right? And what sports, like it's all very, very complex. And so I just want to treat it with the delicacy of which it is.
And I so much appreciate it. Again, I mean, this is not, I want to get a perspective, and you have a great vantage point for perspective that I don't have, and sitting here and wanting to know, because it does matter in our society. It's been propelled to a point where, everyone's talking about whether you want to or not, quite honestly. And again, that want to or not, it's like, hey, if it impacts me, great. If it doesn't impact me, then I don't want to get drug into it, right? And that's fair in a lot of ways. And the situation that I think is so hard, as you shared, the fact and the common sense. And, let's be honest, like little kids up until, 8, 9, 10 years old, there's a lot of girls that are more athletic than boys at that point, right? They develop a little bit faster. And then all of a sudden the tables switch. And, that's where it's kind of like, oh, okay, it's very common to have, mixed sex, mixed gender teams at the, lower youth levels. And then all of a sudden we recognize over time, it's like, the boy who's shaving, who has facial hair in 6th grade as compared to the little itty bitty girl that, is dainty and like very frail, that's not going to be safe.
Right.
And I think the challenge, because you said that's commonsensical, and yet to be able to apply it where it needs to be. And I think there's as many people that don't vocalize that common sense because either they don't want to admit it or like are trying not to allow that caveat that make it difficult to say, okay. The other thing that I would wonder, you and I both don't know. My children aren't, I don't know if your daughter is not, but the people that, we live in a world that there are manipulators. We talked about this earlier, coaches that manipulate. I have a hard time thinking there's not individuals that aren't manipulating their gender identity to fulfill some value. I'm not saying they are. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, but I'm having a hard time saying that's not altogether possible at some point.
Yes.
And so even that makes it, a little wishy-washy. And I think you maybe said that earlier. And again, it's hard here. You and I aren't going to decide, right? It's just having a conversation and a perspective. And it's like, okay, yeah.
I think a lot of these decisions are made too without ever speaking to a trans athlete. Like, do you know anyone who's trans? Have you ever had a conversation with a trans athlete? Like, we're
personally,
not getting,
no.
Yeah. And that you're the majority of the population. Like, most people do not know anyone who is trans. And so we want to make decisions for people that we've never even spoke to human to human. And I think that would make a big difference if we actually like allowed them as part of the conversation, if we got to meet them, talk to them. Why do you want to play sports? Like, I think we're creating their narratives that may or may not be true. So, yeah.
And it's also, I think it's fair to say in that narrative, even if it is, participating in the gender were assigned birth, call it that way, is that limiting your opportunity? In other words, if you're say you were a born male, you chose to change genders, now you identify as a female, are you not athletic enough? Is there not a place on the quote unquote boys team so you can't play, but then you can go and say, I'm going to identify, again, I'm going to go play on the team where I identify and automatically I have a spot. Well, if you have a spot there, that means somebody else lost a spot. And so it's just kind of like, where does that mix in? Because that's a part of it. There's limited spots. And again, what I bring all of this to come back and agree with you is it's very challenging and difficult when there's so many perspectives that are trying to engage and create a ultimate decision.
Yeah. And I challenge anyone who's having this conversation is to not have a lens of fear, right? And to have a lens of compassion and acceptance. And how would that change the conversation? And because I've never heard of an athlete who just decided, hey, overnight, I'm going to go play on the girls team because I want a spot. That could happen one day. I'm just a believer that these are human beings who want to participate in sport and gain the value of what sport gives. And so I'm not cynical in this sense, right? So I encourage people who are having these conversations to not have it be based in fear and loss and what some people may not be in our roster, and like what nourishing conversations can we have? What like life can we give in these conversations to people who are already struggling, I think.
Well, I mean, just as it's not a rebuttal, not a retort, but just a consideration. What you said, hey, you're uncomfortable sometimes walking into either gender bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that you expressing that means there's probably a lot of other, I'm going to say female athletes that are uncomfortable saying, oh, now I'm uncomfortable in the locker room. I think that's fair to assume. Just as much as you express your uncomfort in it, it's probably fair that there are, I would say straight females that feel uncomfortable. And again, that's where it comes back to the compassion. Get it? Yeah, we have to accept it what it is. But then I think it also, if we're going to be compassionate one way, we surely got to be compassionate another way and really try to minimize some of that fear and come back to what you expressed earlier, which I agree is, where's the common sense line?
Yeah, common sense. Yeah. because I think these trans athletes, they don't want to change in that locker room. Like, I will tell you that, Tyler, like they're just as uncomfortable, if not more, to change in that locker room. So they want to be in their own stall. So I think, that concept, there is just as much discomfort on their side as there is
on both sides.
Yes.
I mean, I'll go back to the identified male who's playing on a quote unquote male soccer team, who's like, I don't feel comfortable here. They jump over to the women's, team. Doesn't necessarily, they're not all of a sudden comfortable there either. And it's just kind of, again, that's where, and I'm not saying that absolutely, I'm just, generalizing in this conversation that's possible, and it makes it hard.
If you want to have a really great conversation with a trans athlete who really knows everything about this topic, I encourage you to get Chris Mosier on here. He runs transathlete.com. I think that conversation would probably blow your mind in a way that I can't, because one, I'm not a trans athlete, and two, I'm not fully proficient in all of the legislation and stuff. Chris could really have a very educational, informative conversation with your audience and with you, if that's something that is of interest to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. As we wrap up, because I know our time is passed, and like I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people learn more about you, what you do, your book, all of that stuff?
Thanks for asking. So I have a website, which is joannalohman.com, which shows all the facets of my career. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn, love new followers, love the conversation on LinkedIn and sharing my life. And then on Instagram, it's Joanna Lohman 15 for all the pictures of baby Luna, who's much older than she is in that photo. But yeah, those are different ways that people can follow me. And you can find my book on my website and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Tyler, for this awesome convo.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad we got to do this. Obviously, mutual friends Hannah and Cullen have said so many great things about you. For everyone watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to get notified whenever we drop new content. And if you're listening on Apple iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen, if you could do this, could you rate and review this episode? When you do that, more people will find impactful leaders like Joanna. Thank you so much. And until next time, choose to lead with impact.